The Georgia heat shimmered off the pavement as Black Naomi Pierce, 67, stood at a bus stop in Midtown Atlanta, the sound of her son's car tires fading into the distance. The last words he'd flung at her, "If you're so independent, find your own way home," still rang in her ears, sharper than the August sun. Her chest rose and fell, trembling between disbelief and pride. "I'm not a child, Malik," she had said moments earlier, her voice low but steady. "You don't get to make decisions for me just because you've got money now." But Black Malik Pierce, 38, all business suits and ambition, had only sighed in frustration. "Mom, you're being unreasonable. That senior living community is perfect for you. Safe, comfortable, with doctors right there." "Everything except my freedom," Naomi had whispered. That's when he'd slammed on the brakes, the car jerking to the curb. "Fine," he snapped. "Let's see how independent you really are." And then he was gone. Now, with her purse still sitting on the kitchen counter and her phone blinking a desperate 3% battery, Naomi felt the sting of humiliation. 67 years old, a widow, a retired English teacher, and stranded like a lost child. She sank onto the metal bench, her hip aching, and stared at the heat rippling over Peachtree Street. The city moved around her, cars humming, people rushing, but she felt invisible. Then came a voice beside her, deep, cultured, calm. "Pardon me," the man said. "But I couldn't help overhearing your predicament." Naomi turned. The speaker was an older gentleman, early 70s, smooth, dark skin, neatly cropped silver hair. A white cane rested against the bench, and dark glasses shaded his eyes. His tailored light gray suit whispered wealth and restraint. "I'm fine, really," Naomi said quickly, her pride reflexively rising. He smiled faintly. "My hearing's excellent, Ms. Pierce," she said. "Naomi Pierce, Ms. Pierce," he repeated smoothly, turning his head with uncanny precision toward her voice. "Your son left you without transportation. That's unkind." "That's one word for it," she muttered. He nodded slightly, as though confirming her dignity. "Then allow me to make a suggestion," he said, leaning closer, lowering his voice. "Pretend you're my wife. My driver is coming. Your son will regret leaving you like this." Naomi blinked. "Excuse me?" The man extended his hand with practiced grace. "I'm Black Zion Holt, by the way." His handshake was warm and sure, not searching or hesitant. "I'm offering you a dignified exit from an undignified situation," he said. "No strings attached. Unless, of course, you're uncomfortable accepting help from an old blind man." Something about his tone, gentle, teasing, self-aware, disarmed her. She found herself smiling despite everything. "Being blind doesn't make you incapable, Mr. Holt, just like being older doesn't make me helpless." He chuckled softly, a sound that felt like sunlight through lace. "Touché, Ms. Pierce. Then we understand each other." At that moment, a sleek black Cadillac glided to the curb. The driver, an older man in uniform, stepped out with quiet precision. "Right on time, Clarence," Zion said. "We'll be giving Ms. Pierce a ride home today." Clarence nodded respectfully. "Of course, sir," Naomi hesitated. Everything in her life, decades of responsibility and prudence, warned her not to get into a stranger's car, no matter how elegant the stranger. But when her phone finally died with a faint beep, she exhaled, surrendering to impulse. "Thank you," she said quietly. The car smelled faintly of leather and expensive cologne. Zion's voice floated toward her. "Where to, Ms. Pierce?" She gave her address, a modest apartment complex on Atlanta's east side. After a pause, Zion spoke again. "Would you allow me to offer you tea first? My home is nearby, and after such an afternoon, I suspect you deserve something more comforting than silence." The polite answer should have been no. But the thought of her empty apartment, the echo of Malik's anger still hanging in the air, made her answer differently. "Tea would be lovely," she said softly. As they drove through Buckhead, past magnolia-lined streets and gated estates, Naomi studied the man beside her. His silver hair was sharp, his posture proud, his gestures far too confident for someone who couldn't see. "If you're wondering whether you've made a terrible mistake," Zion said suddenly, a hint of amusement curling through his voice, "I assure you, Clarence has an impeccable driving record, and I'm far too respectable to be dangerous." Naomi laughed for the first time that day. "I was actually thinking you seem remarkably aware for someone who claims he can't see." "Ah," Zion murmured. "One either adapts or becomes bitter. I chose adaptation." Moments later, the Cadillac turned through iron gates and rolled up a long, curved driveway. Naomi's breath caught. The house was enormous, 3 stories of white stone and soft southern grandeur. Gardens blooming in perfect order beneath the fading sun. Zion tilted his head toward her, smiling faintly. "Welcome to my humble abode, Ms. Pierce. I hope you like Earl Grey." And as the driver opened her door, Naomi Pierce, widowed teacher, mother, woman freshly betrayed, realized she was stepping into a world that would change everything she thought she knew about men, kindness, and deception. The Holt estate loomed before Black Naomi Pierce like a dream she had no business entering. 3 floors of marble, glass and history nestled deep in Buckhead, its columns glinting gold beneath the dying sun. She hesitated on the front steps, her fingers brushing the smooth handle of her evening bag. "What am I doing here?" she wondered. "I don't even know this man." "Ms. Pierce?" Black Zion Holt said, turning his head toward her with uncanny accuracy. "I promise no traps, only tea and perhaps conversation." The front door opened before she could reply. Black Clarence Boyd, the driver, nodded respectfully and ushered them into a foyer that looked like something from a movie. Polished marble floors, twin staircases curling upward, a chandelier throwing fractured rainbows onto the walls. Naomi's breath caught. She'd lived her life grading essays under fluorescent lights, not standing beneath crystal chandeliers worth more than her entire retirement fund. Zion lifted his cane lightly. "We'll take tea in the garden room, Clarence. And perhaps some of those lemon biscuits Mrs. Chen made yesterday." "Yes, sir," Clarence replied before gliding silently down a hallway. Zion turned slightly, offering his arm with practiced precision. "Shall we?" Naomi hesitated, then slipped her hand through his elbow. His arm felt strong, solid. For a man who claimed blindness, he moved with startling confidence, counting steps softly under his breath as they crossed the hall. The garden room opened like a revelation, floor-to-ceiling windows spilling sunlight over wicker furniture, cascading plants and manicured flower beds beyond the glass. The air smelled faintly of lemon and jasmine. Naomi sank into a chair near the window. "This is beautiful," she murmured. Zion smiled faintly. "So I'm told." He set his cane aside and sat opposite her, his posture composed, precise. "Beauty is best appreciated through memory and imagination, don't you think?" Naomi studied him, intrigued. "You've lived here long?" "All my life," he said, "though I've closed off parts of it since losing my sight. I prefer to keep the rooms I know by heart." Something in his tone made her chest ache, a quiet loneliness behind the calm. "I know that feeling," she said softly. "After my husband passed, I downsized. The silence of our old house was unbearable. Frank, wasn't it?" Zion asked gently. Naomi blinked. "Yes, how did you—" He smiled, unbothered. "You mentioned being widowed, and your tone carried the rhythm of a long marriage. I simply guessed." Before she could reply, Clarence returned with a tray that gleamed like sunlight. Silver teapot, delicate china, small sandwiches arranged with precision. It looked too fine for her trembling hands. When the butler left, Zion poured the tea himself. Steady, precise, not a single drop spilled. Naomi watched, curiosity stirring. He doesn't move like a blind man, she thought. Zion leaned back, his expression calm. "Now then, Ms. Pierce," he said. "I'd like to know what kind of man would leave a woman like you stranded on a city street." Naomi blinked, startled by his bluntness. "A son who thinks love means control," she said after a pause. "Malik doesn't mean harm. He just refuses to see me as capable." Zion nodded thoughtfully. "Children struggle to imagine their parents as independent beings. My daughter Sophia was the same when I lost my sight. She wanted to manage every hour of my life until I reminded her. Blindness isn't helplessness. Naomi smiled faintly. I suppose we both raise children who think they're doing what's best for us. Perhaps, Zion said. But I sense you still have some fight in you. I have plenty, Naomi replied, lifting her chin. I just wish my son remembered who taught him how to stand on his own. Zion's laughter rolled through the glass room like warm thunder. Touché, Ms. Pierce. You remind me of myself before I learned that defiance can be elegant. Their eyes, or rather, her eyes and his hidden gaze, met for a long, quiet moment. Outside, the fountain murmured softly, and for the first time in years, Naomi felt the strange electricity of being seen. Not as a mother. Not as a widow, but as a woman. Then the door opened. A tall, poised woman in her early 40s entered, impeccably dressed, tablet in hand, her posture businesslike. Dad, she said, stopping short when she saw Naomi. You have company? Zion smiled. Sophia, perfect timing. This is Black Naomi Pierce. Naomi, my daughter, Black Sophia Holt. Sophia extended a manicured hand and a polite smile. It's lovely to meet you. My father doesn't often entertain. Your father rescued me, Naomi said evenly, from a rather humiliating situation. Sophia's eyes softened, though her tone stayed measured. That sounds exactly like him. She turned to her father with a half smile. Always collecting strays? Naomi is hardly a stray, Zion countered smoothly. She's a retired literature teacher, sharp, eloquent, and vastly underappreciated by her son. Sophia laughed lightly. Well then, you're in good company. My father's never been a fan of being underestimated either. She checked her watch. I have a board meeting in half an hour. Will you be at the foundation dinner tomorrow, Dad? Wouldn't miss it, Zion said. As Sophia departed, Naomi watched the interaction. Warm, yet guarded, the kind of love threaded with unspoken tension. When the door closed, Zion sighed softly. My daughter worries too much. Thinks I need constant supervision, Naomi smiled faintly. It means she loves you. Love, he murmured. Sometimes disguises itself as control. The word settled between them like a mirror, reflecting both of their truths. Come, Zion said finally, rising from his chair. It's time we get you home before your son sends out a search party. Naomi followed him out through the shimmering hall. Her heart unsettled. She couldn't explain it, but something about this man, this blind philanthropist who navigated marble floors without hesitation, felt like both a mystery and a warning. As the Cadillac pulled away from the mansion, Naomi looked out at the sunset washing over Atlanta's skyline. She didn't know it yet. But this drive was only the beginning. The sun was dipping low when Black Naomi Pierce's modest apartment complex came into view. Brick walls faded from years of Georgia heat, a small garden she tended herself, and neighbors who greeted her with nods instead of gossip. Compared to Black Zion Holt's mansion in Buckhead, it looked painfully ordinary. But it was hers. There's a car in front of your building, Zion remarked casually. Dark blue sedan. A man's pacing beside it. Naomi turned, startled. That's my son, Malik. Her heart skipped. How could you possibly? Zion smiled faintly. The air changes when someone paces. You can hear the rhythm. Before she could question further, the Cadillac slowed to a stop. Zion turned toward her with that same quiet authority. Miss Pierce, would you indulge me in a small performance? A performance? She echoed, raising an eyebrow. I'd like your son to witness your return, he said evenly. A chauffeur-driven car, a gentleman companion, a touch of dignity. A lesson in perspective, perhaps? Naomi hesitated, torn between amusement and disbelief. You want to make him jealous? Zion chuckled softly. No, I want him to see what he refused to see before, that you are still a woman of worth, not a burden to be managed. Naomi's lips curved. That's petty, maybe, he admitted, but effective. Something inside her, something that had been silent for too long, agreed. She turned toward him. All right, Mr. Holt, what did you have in mind? His plan was simple. Black Clarence Boyd would open her door with formal precision. Zion would exit with dignified grace, leaning lightly on her arm, and she would make the introductions. No lies, just context reframed. As the car glided behind Malik's blue sedan, Naomi saw her son turn. Confusion flickered across his face as the driver in a crisp uniform stepped out. Clarence opened the rear door. "Ms. Pierce," he said respectfully, his voice carrying across the parking lot. Naomi stepped out, spine straight, chin high. The scent of leather and garden air lingered as Zion followed. Dark glasses, silver hair, his hand finding her arm with quiet assurance. "Mom." Malik's voice broke the silence, relief and bewilderment colliding. He hurried forward. "I've been calling for hours." "Where have you been?" "Your phone died," he said accusingly. "It was nearly dead," Naomi replied smoothly. "When you left me at the bus stop." His face flushed. Shame and confusion warred behind his eyes. He glanced between his mother and the stately man at her side, clearly trying to make sense of the scene. "Malik," Naomi said calmly. "This is Black Zion Holt. Mr. Holt, my son." "Malik Pierce. A pleasure," Zion said, extending his hand in Malik's general direction with flawless accuracy. "I've heard so much about you." Malik shook his hand automatically, business instincts overriding confusion. "Likewise, though Mom hasn't mentioned you." "We only met today," Naomi explained. "After you drove away, Mr. Holt kindly offered me a ride home. We discovered a shared love for literature. He's invited me to a foundation dinner tomorrow evening." Malik blinked. "Foundation dinner?" "The Holt Family Foundation," Zion added smoothly. "We support arts education and accessibility programs. Your mother's experience as an educator offers valuable perspective." Malik's expression shifted, caution giving way to calculation. His marketing mind, always assessing, started piecing together the clues: the luxury car, the driver, the composure, the wealth. "That's wonderful," Malik managed finally. "Mom's always been passionate about education." "Indeed," Zion replied with a gentle smile. "Her insights on bridging generations through literature are particularly refreshing." He turned toward Naomi, his voice carrying quiet warmth. "Until tomorrow, then. Clarence will collect you at 6. Naomi nodded gracefully, her heart thrumming at the unexpected gallantry. "I look forward to it." Zion took her hand, raising it lightly to his lips. "The pleasure was mine, Ms. Pierce." The gesture was old-fashioned, intimate, yet utterly proper. And when the black Cadillac rolled away with a low hum, Malik stood frozen, staring at his mother like she was someone new. "Mom," he began carefully. "Who exactly is that man?" "A gentleman," Naomi said, slipping her keys from her purse, "who reminded me that my age doesn't define my capability." Inside her apartment, Malik followed like a chastened child. Naomi put the kettle on, the simplicity of the moment grounding her after the strange luxury of the Holt estate. "I was worried," Malik said at last. "When you didn't answer, I checked the hospitals." "That must have been frightening," Naomi said softly. "Almost as frightening as being stranded without a wallet or a plan," he winced. "I know, it was cruel. I shouldn't have left you there." "No," Naomi agreed, meeting his gaze. "You shouldn't have. And you shouldn't make decisions for me as if I were a child." He dropped into a chair, rubbing the back of his neck. "I just don't want to lose you, Mom. You're alone." "You've got arthritis. The stairs are real concerns," she interrupted gently, placing a cup before him. "But not reasons to take away my autonomy." He exhaled, defeated. "You're right," she smiled faintly. "Good. Then maybe next time you'll ask instead of dictate." A beat of silence passed before Malik's curiosity returned. "So, this Zion Holt, what's he like?" Naomi allowed herself a small, knowing smile. "A man who listens. You'd be surprised how rare that is." As Malik left that evening, full of apologies and new respect, Naomi stood at her window, the city lights flickering against the darkening sky. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I hope our small performance achieved its purpose. Looking forward to tea tomorrow. Sleep well." Naomi read it twice, her pulse unsteady. Something about the message, the precision, the charm, made her wonder. Who exactly was Zion Holt? And why did the thought of seeing him again make her heart feel 20 years younger? Morning sunlight spilled through Black Naomi Pierce's curtains, but she'd been awake long before dawn. Thoughts of Black Zion Holt replaying like chapters of a mystery novel. She sat at her kitchen table, robe wrapped tight around her, the glow of her phone lighting her face. His text still sat there, looking forward to tea tomorrow. Sleep well. She'd read it a dozen times, analyzing every word like one of her students once analyzed Shakespeare. It was polite, composed, and far too personal. But what unsettled her most wasn't the message. It was the memory of the previous night. The way he'd described the exact color of Malik's car, and the pacing figure outside her building. How had a blind man noticed that? As she poured herself coffee, the question gnawed deeper. Was he really blind? Her rational mind argued that it was nonsense. People with vision loss often developed keen awareness. But her intuition, that instinct that had guided her through decades of reading people, whispered otherwise. At noon, the doorbell rang. A uniformed courier stood outside, holding a white box wrapped in silk ribbon. "For Ms. Naomi Pierce," he said with a courteous smile. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a deep sapphire blue evening gown, a soft cashmere wrap, and a note written in fluid cursive for this evening's foundation dinner. "I took the liberty of having Sophia choose something appropriate. Should it not be to your taste, please disregard." Naomi's first reaction was indignation. The presumption of it? The audacity of sending her a dress. But when she unfolded the gown and saw the elegance of its cut, classic, understated, yet sensual in its simplicity, the anger melted into something far more complicated. Her fingers brushed the fabric. It had been years since anyone had given her something beautiful, simply because they thought she deserved it. She caught her reflection in the mirror, the soft silver of her hair, the lines at the corners of her mouth, and felt a pang she hadn't known in a long time. Was it possible that someone still saw her as desirable? Her phone rang, snapping her out of the moment. "Mom!" Black Malik Pierce's voice came through, cautious, even apologetic. "Just checking in after yesterday." "I'm fine," she said, settling into her chair. "Actually, I'm preparing for this evening's dinner." "Yeah, about that." His voice tightened. "I did some research on Zion Holt. Of course he had. Malik never could let things go. He's not just wealthy, Mom, he's powerful. His company, Holt Technologies, practically created modern data encryption. Forbes says he's worth over $3 billion, Naomi frowned. And he's been a recluse since an accident 15 years ago. Rarely seen in public, hardly gives interviews. People say his daughter Sophia runs most of the foundation." Malik paused. "Doesn't it seem odd he'd suddenly take an interest in you?" She couldn't help but smile. "You think he's after my fortune of half a pension and a shelf of secondhand books?" "Mom, I'm serious," Malik insisted. "Men like that don't do things without a reason. He's strategic." "Maybe his strategy is kindness," she said softly. "Not everything has a motive, Malik." When the call ended, Naomi sat in silence for a long while, her son's warnings echoing in her head. And yet, they only deepened her curiosity. So she opened her tablet and searched, "Zion Holt Blind Atlanta Philanthropist." The results painted a portrait of contradiction. A tech genius turned reclusive visionary, celebrated for his foundation's generosity, but notorious for his privacy. Some articles mentioned that his blindness resulted from a degenerative condition. Others hinted at rumors that it wasn't as severe as reported. Anonymous insiders spoke of miraculous intuition, perfect spatial memory, and an uncanny ability to sense people. None of it was proof. But together, it formed a picture she couldn't ignore. When evening came, Naomi stood before her mirror once more. The blue gown fit perfectly, too perfectly. It flowed along her curves, modest yet striking, the color deepening her warm skin tone like twilight. She pinned her silver hair into an elegant twist, applied a touch of lipstick, and for the first time in years, felt her pulse quicken at the sight of her own reflection. Precisely at 6, the doorbell rang. Black Clarence Boyd stood there, as impeccable as before. "Good evening, Miss Pierce," he said with a slight bow. "Mr. Holt sends his apologies for not collecting you personally. He's attending to last-minute details for the dinner." Naomi smiled faintly. "Please thank him for the dress. It's lovely." Clarence's expression barely shifted, but there was a flicker, a hesitation. "He has excellent taste," he said, then coughed lightly. "That is, an excellent sense of style." She noticed the slip but said nothing as he guided her to the waiting car. The Cadillac slid through Atlanta's glittering downtown, toward a gleaming glass building overlooking the river, the Holt Museum of Contemporary Art. Outside, cameras flashed as guests arrived, local dignitaries, artists, and executives. Clarence spoke softly. "Mr. Holt requested that we use the side entrance. He prefers to avoid unnecessary attention." He led her through a private corridor and up a quiet elevator, where the air smelled faintly of cedar and new paint. When the doors opened, Zion was waiting. He stood in a tailored black tuxedo, his dark glasses replaced by tinted lenses that caught the light. "Naomi," he said, his voice warm and precise. "You came," she smiled. "Did you doubt I would?" "People often find my world intimidating," he replied. "But you seem unshakable." He reached for her hand, fingertips finding hers effortlessly. "The dress suits you perfectly." "Your daughter chose it," she teased, watching him carefully. "She did," he said. "But I chose the color. Dark blue, like the tone of your voice." Naomi's lips parted in surprise. "My voice has a color?" "When one sense fades," he said with a quiet smile, "the others learn to see differently." Her heart stumbled, half at his words, half at the way his gaze, hidden behind those lenses, seemed to find hers anyway. Then his fingers brushed lightly near her ear. "The sapphire earrings suit you," he murmured. Naomi froze. She hadn't touched them, hadn't even mentioned them aloud. He'd known. Before she could respond, Clarence's voice cut through the moment. "Sir, the guests are assembling." Zion stepped back, expression unreadable. "Duty calls?" He offered his arm. "Shall we, Miss Pierce?" She placed her hand on his sleeve, forcing a steady breath. As they stepped into the glittering hall of the gala, Naomi knew one thing with absolute certainty. Zion Holt could see. But what she didn't know yet was why he pretended otherwise. The marble atrium of the Holt Museum of Contemporary Art shimmered beneath chandeliers that cast light like falling stars. Atlanta's elite moved in clusters, city officials, CEOs, philanthropists, all drawn to Black Zion Holt, the mysterious blind billionaire who funded half the city's art and education programs. And now, to their curiosity, he wasn't alone. Black Naomi Pierce, graceful in her sapphire gown, her silver hair pinned elegantly, walked beside him, an unfamiliar face among familiar power. She felt the hum of curiosity following her like perfume. "Stay close," Zion murmured softly, offering his arm. "These gatherings are noisy labyrinths." "I think you navigate them just fine," Naomi replied under her breath. A quiet smile touched his lips. "Appearances can be deceiving, Ms. Pierce." They entered the grand hall where round tables gleamed beneath golden light. A live string quartet played faint jazz, and servers glided past with trays of champagne. Before Naomi could speak, a striking woman in an emerald gown approached, her diamonds catching the light. "Zion Holt," she exclaimed. "Marvelous event as always. And who is your lovely companion?" Zion turned slightly toward her voice, his performance flawless. "Elaine Harrington," he murmured aside to Naomi, then raised his tone. "Elaine, allow me to introduce Naomi Pierce, a retired literature teacher whose insights have been invaluable to our foundation's educational initiatives." Naomi blinked. Teacher had somehow become educational advisor. "A pleasure." "Miss Pierce," Elaine said warmly, How refreshing to see new faces in Zion's circle. He's become such a recluse. With good reason, Zion replied smoothly. Large gatherings can be disorienting when one cannot see. Elaine's eyes widened. Oh, of course. I didn't mean no offense taken, Zion interrupted kindly. Then, lowering his voice, now, if you'll excuse us, I believe the mayor is trying to catch my attention. Naomi followed his line of sight. The mayor, however, was turned away, deep in conversation at the bar. Her brows lifted slightly. The mayor's back is to you, she whispered as they walked off. Zion's lips quirked. Ah, then my instincts must have been mistaken. Her chest tightened. Instincts, he called it. But his mistakes were too precise. They weaved through the crowd effortlessly, his movements fluid, his turns perfectly timed. He never bumped a chair, never hesitated at steps, never once faltered. It was as if his blindness existed only in others' eyes. Then Black Sophia Holt appeared, elegant in burgundy satin, tablet in hand. Dad, she said, her voice polished but firm, we're ready to begin the presentation. And Ms. Pierce? She offered a courteous smile. You're seated with us at the Foundation's table. Thank you, dear, Zion said, touching his daughter's arm. You're radiant as always. Sophia's expression softened. Though Naomi noticed the flicker of suspicion in her gaze, an appraisal masked as politeness. Dinner began with quiet ceremony. 5 courses, delicate wine pairings, and speeches that danced between inspiration and strategy. When it was Zion's turn, Clarence guided him to the small stage, his white cane in hand. Naomi watched from her seat, her breath tight. He stood beneath the lights, every gesture measured, every pause deliberate. His voice filled the hall, deep, resonant, charming. He spoke of art as memory, of vision as more than sight. He never looked at notes, never stumbled. His gaze swept the audience with uncanny precision, landing on each table as though reading faces he wasn't supposed to see. The crowd applauded. Some dabbed at their eyes. Naomi, however, felt her pulse quicken, not with admiration, but realization. He's not performing blindness. He's performing sightlessness. When he returned to the table, she leaned close, her voice low. Impressive speech. One might almost forget you can't see your audience. He paused, hand hovering near his glass. Then, with a faint smile, he replied, one prepares thoroughly when performing blind. The emphasis on performing was deliberate, daring. Their eyes met, or rather, her gaze met the veil of his tinted lenses. A silent understanding passed between them. As dessert was served, Naomi observed quietly. Zion identified each dish without touch. He anticipated servers before they spoke. And when a waiter dropped a tray at the far end of the room, his head turned before the crash reached anyone's ears. Her suspicion solidified into certainty. When the formal dinner ended, the orchestra began a slow, lilting melody. Guests mingled under golden lights. Zion guided Naomi toward a quiet alcove near the sculpture garden, 2 champagne flutes in hand. You've been quiet, he said, offering her a glass. Second thoughts about our friendship? Naomi accepted it, eyes steady. I've been observing. Ah. His lips curved. And what have your observations revealed, Professor Pierce? Her heartbeat drummed in her ears. That you navigate your world with remarkable precision for a man who supposedly can't see it. For the first time, his posture shifted, his shoulders straightening, his composure fracturing just enough to reveal a flicker of surprise. The human brain adapts, he said finally. Sound memory, blue cars, earrings you've never touched, crashing trays you react to before they fall. Naomi's tone softened, not accusing, but curious. I taught literature for 40 years, Mr. Holt. I can recognize a carefully constructed story when I see one. For a long moment, he said nothing. The orchestra's notes floated faintly through the glass, mingling with the sound of the fountain outside. Then his voice dropped low. This is hardly the venue for such a conversation. Then suggest a better one, she countered before she could stop herself. A quiet smile spread across his face, half admiration, half surrender. The sculpture garden, 10 minutes. Follow the east path to the fountain. Before she could reply, Sophia Holt appeared again, immaculate as ever. Dad, she said smoothly, the board members would like a few moments with you. Her eyes flicked between them, sharp but polite. Ms. Pierce, I hope you're enjoying yourself. Immensely, Naomi said with a calm smile. Your father has been enlightening. Sophia's lips tightened ever so slightly. He does enjoy making an impression. As Naomi excused herself toward the powder room, she could feel both of them watching her, the daughter's suspicion and the father's unspoken challenge. In 10 minutes, she would meet him by the fountain, and there, she suspected, the mask of blindness would finally crack. The sculpture garden of the Holt Museum lay bathed in silver moonlight, its marble figures standing like silent witnesses amid whispering fountains. The cool night air carried the scent of jasmine and stone, blending with the distant notes of the orchestra drifting from inside. Black Naomi Pierce followed the east path just as Black Zion Holt had instructed, the hem of her sapphire gown brushing the ground. Her pulse beat steady but strong, part anticipation, part defiance. When she reached the central fountain, Zion was already there. No cane. No glasses. He stood perfectly still, his eyes uncovered for the first time, dark, sharp, undeniably seeing. Naomi stopped a few feet away. So it's true, she said quietly. You're not blind. Zion didn't flinch. Not entirely, he replied, his voice low, deliberate. My sight is limited, but my deception is intentional. She folded her arms, holding his gaze. Intentional? That's an interesting word for lying to an entire city. He stepped closer, moonlight catching the faint silver at his temples. When you own a company that designs global security systems, and you learn too late that someone inside wants you dead, you adapt. 15 years ago, I was targeted. My blindness became a shield, a way to disappear in plain sight. Naomi's brow furrowed. So all of this, the glasses, the cane, it's a performance? A necessary one, he said. Only Sophia, Clarence, and a handful of lawyers know. The rest of the world sees a man too broken to be dangerous. And that illusion keeps us alive. She exhaled slowly, torn between shock and reluctant understanding. And you let me believe it too. I didn't expect you to notice the inconsistencies so quickly, he admitted with a faint smile. You're observant, sharper than most people I've met in years. Her eyes softened, but her voice stayed cool. Flattery doesn't erase deception. Zion took another step closer, his expression raw now. No pretense, no polish. No, but truth might. For the first time, Naomi saw the exhaustion behind his control, the cost of maintaining perfection, of pretending weakness to survive. I didn't invite you into my life as part of a scheme, he said. I saw a woman abandoned at a bus stop, proud enough to stand her ground even when humiliated. That pride reminded me of who I was before the lies. Before fear, Naomi's heartbeat softened. You rescued me for your own redemption. Perhaps, he said quietly. Or perhaps I just wanted to meet someone who saw past appearances. They stood in silence for a moment, the fountain whispering between them. Then Zion reached into his pocket and withdrew a pair of thin, transparent lenses, nothing like the opaque ones he wore earlier. I wear these only in private, he said. They dull light sensitivity, but not truth. Naomi met his gaze directly. So what am I now at another secret? He stepped closer, until the warmth of his voice brushed her cheek. No, Naomi, you're the first truth I've had in years. Her throat tightened. She wanted to look away, to keep her footing on moral ground, but the sincerity in his tone disarmed her completely. Then stop hiding behind blindness, she said softly. You're a man who's seen too much, not one who's lost sight. He smiled, the faintest glint of light catching in his eyes. Spoken like a teacher who never stopped believing in clarity. They stood close enough now that the night seemed to fade around them. Just two souls unmasking before each other, stripped of titles, age, and fear. From the museum doors, Black Sophia Holt's voice broke the spell. Dad? Zion stepped back quickly, slipping the tinted glasses over his eyes. "Sophia!" he called, his tone perfectly measured again. She approached, heels clicking against the stone. "There you are. I was beginning to think you'd vanished." Her eyes darted toward Naomi, assessing the scene with professional suspicion wrapped in daughterly concern. Naomi composed herself. "Your father and I were just discussing the art." Sophia's gaze lingered on Zion's uncovered cane, then back to Naomi. "I see. My father does love his metaphors." The tension was thick but civilized, each of them masking truth behind smiles. "Ms. Pierce," Sophia said, her voice calm but sharp as glass. "It's late. Let Clarence drive you home." Zion's lips pressed together, the hint of a protest flickering. But Naomi gently touched his arm. "It's all right." "I should go," Sophia nodded curtly. "Good night, then." As Naomi turned to leave, she looked back once, catching Zion's uncovered expression before he retreated into composure again. It was a look that said, "Thank you, and don't give up on me." On the drive home, she watched the city lights shimmer across the windows, her reflection layered over Atlanta's skyline. Everything about this man defied logic, the secrecy, the wealth, the loneliness. Yet something inside her had already shifted. He was no longer the stranger from the bus stop. He was a mystery she didn't want to solve too quickly, and somewhere deep down, she knew this wasn't the end of their story, only the moment when truth began to feel dangerously close to intimacy. Spring sunlight spilled across the Atlanta Botanical Garden, dappling the cobblestone paths where magnolias bloomed in pink and white. The scent of wisteria drifted through the air, mingling with the laughter of families and the quiet murmur of distant fountains. Black Naomi Pierce arrived on time, escorted once again by Black Clarence Boyd in the same impeccable black Cadillac. She wore a cream linen dress, a wide sun hat, and the faintest trace of perfume, something warm and floral. Her pulse quickened as she spotted Black Zion Holt waiting at the entrance, white cane in hand, dark glasses back in place. The illusion was perfect again. "Ms. Pierce," he greeted, his voice composed yet softer than before. "You look radiant. Shall we?" She took his offered arm, her lips curving faintly. "Back to pretending, I see." Zion smiled, just enough to betray amusement. "In public, performance is protection. You of all people should understand that." "True," she said. "But it's still unsettling to watch you become someone else so easily." "That's the price of safety," he replied quietly. "And sometimes, the cost of being believed." They walked slowly beneath the blooming cherry trees, the dappled light playing over them like watercolor. To an outsider, they looked like a distinguished blind man and his elegant companion, nothing more. Yet beneath the choreography lay unspoken tension, an awareness too sharp to ignore. Naomi described the scene aloud, her words naturally blending into conversation. "The petals look like pink snow. They fall so gently it almost feels rehearsed." Zion chuckled softly. "Then I suppose I'm in the right place, among other performers." "You don't have to perform with me," she said. "Perhaps not," he replied, his tone dipping low. "But I like the way it feels when we do." They reached the shaded conservatory, where bursts of tropical color glowed under the glass dome. Inside, away from the crowd, Zion slipped off his glasses for just a moment. His eyes, striking, clear, and intelligent, met hers directly. "This performance grows exhausting in your presence," he admitted. "I find myself wanting to look at you without the veil." Naomi's breath caught. She hadn't realized until now how much she wanted to be looked at, not in pity, not in politeness, but seen. "What do you see when you look at me?" she asked, the words escaping before she could stop them. He smiled, his voice low and steady. "A woman who still has fire in her. Grace, intellect, and a strength she tries too hard to hide." Her cheeks warmed, her defenses faltering. "That's a flattering answer, Mr. Holt." "Truth doesn't need flattery," he said simply. For a moment, the world felt suspended, just the sound of distant birds and their shared silence. Then the shuffle of footsteps in the distance broke the spell. Zion slipped his glasses back on, his composure returning like a tailored suit. As they exited the conservatory, Naomi's phone buzzed. A message from Black Malik Pierce lit the screen. "Big day, Mom! Our agency is pitching the Holt Foundation account this afternoon." Her steps faltered slightly. Zion felt it immediately. "Something wrong?" "No," she said, pocketing her phone. "Just an intersection of worlds I wasn't expecting." He turned his head slightly, almost smiling. "Your son's firm is among the finalists for our next campaign. I've recused myself from the decision, but Sophia will evaluate their proposal." Naomi nodded, a blend of pride and apprehension swirling in her chest. "Thank you for that. I'd rather his success come from merit, not connection." "Understood," Zion said, "though I suspect your son has inherited your drive." As they reached the cafe patio overlooking the garden, a woman in a crisp navy suit approached, Sophia Holt, tablet in hand, her expression businesslike but guarded. "Dad," she said, offering a polite nod to Naomi. "I didn't realize you'd be meeting here today." "Beautiful day for art and conversation," Zion replied easily. Sophia's smile was courteous, yet her eyes flickered with quiet suspicion. "I'll try not to intrude." She turned to Naomi, her tone measured. "I hope my father's not tiring you with his endless lectures on horticultural metaphors." Naomi matched her tone with calm grace. "Not at all. He has a talent for turning flowers into philosophy." Zion chuckled softly, but Sophia's gaze remained analytical, a daughter measuring a potential threat cloaked in charm. After a brief exchange about the Foundation's upcoming projects, Sophia excused herself, murmuring something about a call. Naomi watched her go, feeling the chill of unspoken warning. "She doesn't trust me," Naomi said quietly. "She doesn't trust anyone," Zion replied. "Not since the first attempt on my life. She believes loyalty must be proven, not given." "That's a lonely way to live," Naomi murmured. He tilted his head toward her. "You'd be surprised how many lonely ways there are to survive." They lingered a while longer, sipping tea in the warm Georgia sun. To onlookers, it was a quiet afternoon between friends. But beneath the easy laughter and rehearsed gestures, a bond was deepening, one built on truth wrapped in lies, on attraction shadowed by secrecy. When Clarence finally pulled up with the car, Zion stood, offering his arm once more. "Next time," he said, "no audience. Just dinner, privately, where I can be the man I actually am." Naomi hesitated, her heart pounding. "And which man is that?" Zion's smile was faint, thoughtful. "The one who sees too much and says too little." As she slid into the car, Naomi caught one last glimpse of him standing among the magnolias, a man both real and unreachable. She didn't yet know that his world, carefully balanced between truth and disguise, was about to collide with hers in ways neither of them could control. The first whispers of trouble came 3 weeks later. Black Naomi Pierce sat at her kitchen table in East Atlanta, grading essays for a local literacy program she'd volunteered with. The kettle hummed softly in the background when her phone buzzed, a message from Black Zion Holt. "We may have a small problem. Don't worry. I'll explain at dinner." Her stomach sank. In Zion's world, small problems usually meant something large enough to ruin a reputation. That evening, Clarence arrived as usual, the black Cadillac gleaming under the streetlights. But when Naomi stepped inside, she noticed an unfamiliar tension in the air. Zion's home, normally filled with the faint scent of cedar and piano music, felt watchful, as though every portrait on the walls was listening. Zion met her in the study. His suit jacket was draped over a chair, his sleeves rolled up, his expression shadowed by worry. "Victor Reeves," he said finally. "A journalist. Investigative, relentless. He's digging into my blindness." Naomi's breath caught. "He knows?" "Not yet," Zion said. "But he suspects. Someone leaked that I've been attending private dinners, navigating unassisted. He's been making inquiries about you." "Me?" she repeated, startled. "You were seen leaving the museum with me the night of the gala. Then at the gardens. Then the restaurant last week. Reeves believes you're my companion. And that you might know the truth." Naomi sat slowly, the weight of it pressing into her chest. "If he publishes something, he could destroy everything," Zion finished. "The foundation, my company's public trust, Sophia's standing, even you." Silence hung between them, heavy as dusk. Finally, Naomi said softly, "Then tell the truth before he does." Zion gave a short, humorless laugh. "You think confession is protection? The world forgives weakness, Naomi, but never deception. They'll call it fraud, betrayal, manipulation. Every contract, every donation tied to my name would be questioned." "Maybe," she said, "but at least it would be your truth, not his version of it." He turned to face her, eyes raw, vulnerable. "You've lived an honest life, Naomi. You can afford that luxury. But when the world starts building stories about you, the only defense left is control." "And what about me?" she asked quietly. "What happens when his story paints me as the foolish widow seduced by a liar?" He froze, pain flickering through his gaze. "I would never let that happen." "How?" she challenged gently. "By hiding me too?" For the first time since she'd met him, Zion Holt looked uncertain. The man who'd commanded boardrooms and concealed truth with charm was suddenly just a man cornered by consequences. "I never meant for you to become part of this," he said finally. "But I can't undo it now." Naomi stood, crossing to him. "Then face it with me. Don't fight shadows alone." He looked up at her, and for a long moment neither spoke. Then he reached for her hand, fingers trembling slightly. "You don't understand what that would mean. Try me." His voice dropped low, rough. "If I admit the truth publicly, it won't just be my career that ends. There are investors, security partners, even government contracts tied to the illusion. They'll demand lawsuits, penalties, prison time even." Naomi's chest tightened. "Then why tell me? Why trust me at all?" Zion smiled faintly, the smallest, saddest curve of his lips. "Because I stopped trusting anyone else years ago." She exhaled, her heart splitting between reason and something deeper. "Then let me help you." His brows furrowed. "You already have." Before she could respond, the study door opened. Black Sophia Holt stood there, her expression unreadable. "I thought you'd tell her privately," she said to her father, voice calm but brittle. "I just did," Zion replied evenly. "And she's earned that truth." Sophia's gaze flicked to Naomi. "Then she deserves to know the rest. The journalist has already reached out to the foundation board. He's threatening to release a full exposé within 72 hours. Naomi's pulse spiked. "What does he want?" "Proof," Sophia said. "Or a statement. He's given us a deadline before he goes public." Zion straightened, composure returning like armor. "Then we'll decide what story to give him." Sophia crossed her arms. "You mean another lie?" "I mean control of the narrative," Zion snapped. The room fell silent. Naomi stepped forward slowly. "No," she said firmly. "You can't build truth on half-truths anymore. Tell them everything, about your company, the attacks, the fear. Let them see you as human, not broken." Sophia's eyes softened, though her voice stayed skeptical. "The media doesn't humanize men like him, Miss Pierce. They destroy them. Then let him decide what kind of man he wants to be destroyed as," Naomi said quietly. For a long time, no one spoke. The ticking of the clock filled the air. Finally, Zion looked at Naomi with a strange calm, the resignation of a man who'd fought long enough. "If I do this," he said softly, "I'll need you beside me." Naomi met his gaze without hesitation. Then that's where I'll be. Sophia looked between them, wary, but moved. Then we'd better prepare for war. Outside, thunder rolled across the Atlanta sky, echoing through the marble halls of the Holt estate. Inside, 3 lives that had built themselves on control were about to learn what truth really costs. The following morning dawned gray and heavy, the sky over Atlanta swollen with rain that hadn't yet fallen, the kind of weather that felt like a held breath. Inside the Holt estate, the atmosphere was much the same. Black Zion Holt sat at the head of the long mahogany table in his study, the same table where 100 strategic decisions had once been made. Business deals, board votes, negotiations that had shaped industries. But today, it wasn't business strategy on the table. It was confession. Black Sophia Holt stood at the window, tablet in hand, scrolling through the flood of articles, leaks, and speculation already trickling into the media. Across from them, Black Naomi Pierce sat silently, her hands folded, watching both of them. The daughter torn between loyalty and damage control, the father caught between pride and redemption. "The board's demanding a statement within 24 hours, Sophia said, her tone clipped but controlled. "Victor Reeves has confirmed he's publishing on Sunday." "And the investors?" Zion asked without looking up. "Panicking," Sophia said flatly. "Half want reassurance, the other half want distance. They think you faked your blindness to manipulate public sympathy." Naomi frowned. "That's absurd. He never sought pity." Sophia turned to her sharply. "It doesn't matter what's true. It matters what they believe." Zion's voice, calm but firm, broke the rising tension. "Then it's settled." Sophia blinked. "Settled? What's settled?" He rose slowly, adjusting his cufflinks, every gesture deliberate, every inch of him still exuding the composure of a man in control. "We'll hold a press conference, tomorrow, noon. The Foundation Hall." Sophia's eyes widened. "You're going to admit it?" "I'm going to explain it," he said. "On my terms." Naomi met his gaze. "That's what you wanted all along, isn't it? To stop hiding." A faint smile touched his lips. "You make it sound like freedom." Sophia exhaled, pacing the room. "Dad, this could destroy everything you've built. Decades of credibility, partnerships, philanthropic work." Zion turned toward her, his tone gentler now. "And what is any of that worth if it's built on deception? I've lived half my life pretending to be something I'm not. It's time to let people see the man behind the myth." Sophia's voice wavered despite herself. "And if they hate him?" Zion smiled faintly. "Then at least they'll hate him honestly." Naomi reached across the table, her voice soft but unwavering. "You won't be alone." He covered her hand with his, steady, warm, grounding. Sophia saw it. Her lips pressed into a line, but there was no protest in her eyes now, only a quiet understanding that something deeper than scandal had already begun between them. The next day, Holt Foundation Hall. The marble atrium was packed with reporters, cameras, and microphones, their red recording lights blinking like tiny eyes. Rain tapped the glass roof above, each drop echoing against the tension in the room. Zion walked slowly onto the stage, flanked by Sophia on one side and Naomi on the other. The sight alone, the blind billionaire walking confidently, unassisted, was enough to send murmurs rippling through the crowd. He stopped at the podium, removed his tinted glasses, and placed them beside the microphone. His eyes, clear and calm, scanned the room. Truly scanned. "I suppose," he began, voice resonant and unhurried. "This is the moment I stop pretending." The room fell silent. Cameras clicked. "For years you've known me as a man who lost his sight. You've seen me accept awards, speak on resilience, advocate for accessibility, all while holding a cane and wearing dark lenses. And yes, that part of my story was true. I did lose much of my sight 15 years ago, during an attack that nearly ended my life." He paused, letting the words breathe. "What I didn't lose was vision, the ability to see what most people choose to ignore: corruption, betrayal, fear. I let the world believe I was blind because it made me invisible. It kept my enemies close and my family safe." The journalists scribbled furiously, flashes strobing across his face. "I'm not proud of the deception," he continued, "but I am proud of what that illusion protected. The thousands of students, artists, and families whose lives changed because of this foundation. If the cost of that protection was my reputation, I accept it." He looked toward Naomi briefly, just long enough for her to see gratitude flicker behind the calm. "And to those I've misled, I offer truth, not excuses. I see now that the only blindness worth curing is the one that makes us afraid to be known." The room erupted in questions, shouted names, overlapping voices. "Mr. Holt, was it all a PR strategy? Did you defraud investors? Who knew about the deception? Who is the woman beside you?" That last one made Naomi stiffen slightly. Zion turned to her with the faintest reassuring smile before facing the press again. "The woman beside me," he said firmly, "is Ms. Naomi Pierce. The reason I chose to tell you the truth. She reminded me that dignity doesn't come from power or pretense. It comes from courage." Naomi's breath caught. The world's cameras were now on her, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. Sophia stepped forward, her voice steady, professional. "The Holt Foundation will continue its work under full transparency. A detailed report of all operations will be released by end of week. We stand by the integrity of our mission." It was a perfect transition, calculated, controlled, the daughter preserving what could still be saved. As they left the stage, the crowd's noise followed them like thunder, half outrage, half awe. In the corridor beyond the flashing cameras, Zion exhaled for the first time in years. "It's done." Sophia turned to him. "No, Dad, it's begun." Naomi looked up at him. "How do you feel?" He smiled faintly. Lighter and terrified. She laughed softly. "Then you're finally human." He reached for her hand, openly, without pretense, without fear. And for once, didn't care who saw. Outside, the rain finally broke, washing over Atlanta as though the city itself were exhaling with him. 3 months later, Atlanta had settled into its slow, forgiving rhythm again. The scandal that had shaken the city's most private billionaire had faded into talk show summaries and forgotten headlines. What remained was something rarer: respect. Black Zion Holt had survived the storm. The press conference had done what no lawyer or spin doctor could. It humanized him. His honesty had fractured his empire. Yes, a few investors had walked away. But it also rebuilt his name on something stronger than wealth: truth. The Holt Foundation continued its work, this time with open books, transparent leadership, and Black Sophia Holt officially taking the reins. She ran it with precision and integrity, traits she had inherited from her father, though her trust in people was still a work in progress. And as for Black Naomi Pierce, her life had changed in ways she never expected. The literacy program she'd founded after retirement now received a grant directly from the Holt Foundation. She no longer rode the bus every morning. Zion had insisted on assigning a driver, though she often laughed and told him she preferred the simplicity of public transport. They saw each other often: quiet dinners, late-night phone calls, garden walks through the Holt estate where masks and glasses were long gone. Their connection had evolved beyond attraction. It had become something grounded and calm, the steady hum of two souls who had seen each other's worst and still chosen to stay. But today felt different. Zion's black sedan pulled to a stop along Peachtree Street, near a weathered metal bench shaded by an old oak tree. Naomi blinked in surprise. "Why are we here?" Zion smiled faintly. You said once that freedom and humiliation shared the same address. I thought we might visit it again, under better circumstances. She turned, realization dawning. The bus stop. The very same one where her story, their story, had begun. The air smelled faintly of summer rain, pavement still glistening from the storm. Naomi stepped out of the car, her heels clicking against the sidewalk. You remember every detail, she murmured. I remember the look on your face, Zion said softly. Fierce, proud, refusing to let despair own you. She chuckled. And you thought there's a woman I can recruit into one of my elaborate deceptions? Zion's smile deepened. I thought, there's a woman who doesn't need saving, but might let me walk beside her anyway. They stood in silence for a moment, the hum of traffic weaving through their shared quiet. Then Zion turned toward her, his expression tender but solemn. Naomi, he said, his voice low. I spent most of my life building walls between me and danger, me and truth, me and people. You didn't just walk through them. You tore them down. Her chest tightened. You needed someone to remind you that being seen isn't the same as being exposed. He reached into his jacket pocket, withdrew a small velvet box, and opened it slowly. Inside was a simple platinum ring, elegant, timeless, like everything about him. Naomi's eyes widened. Zion? He held her gaze steadily. I don't want to live behind walls anymore. Not in business. Not in love. You showed me that courage doesn't end when youth fades. It begins when you stop pretending. Her breath trembled. Are you asking me? I'm asking you to share whatever's left of this life with me, he said softly. Not as a performance, as truth. For a long suspended moment, neither spoke. The sound of a city bus hissed to a stop nearby, its brakes sighing like punctuation to fate. Naomi looked up at him, the man who had once pretended blindness to survive and now stood before her with nothing hidden. Zion Holt, she whispered, eyes shining. You are the most impossible man I've ever met. He smiled gently. And yet? And yet, she said, taking his hand. Yes. The ring slid onto her finger. Smooth, certain, almost inevitable. As a few passers-by glanced their way, unaware of the history woven into this quiet moment, Zion lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it lightly. Full circle, he murmured. Naomi smiled through tears. Except this time, I'm not stranded. Zion glanced toward the approaching bus. No, he said softly. This time we both have somewhere to go. The bus pulled away, its reflection, gliding across the puddles, leaving behind two figures standing beneath the oak. An old man with new eyes, and a woman who'd taught him to see again. Atlanta moved on around them, loud, alive, unaware. But for them, the world had quieted into a single, simple truth. They had finally arrived where they belonged,